So yeah, fuck me, no fuck you may be a common saying around my house, but the actual official words is better late than never. So I think I'm running like, whatever, 13 minutes or so late. Today was kind of a busy day. So, you know, I was out on the property running the chainsaw and such, and that's actually kind of exhausting. It isn't so much the saw work that's exhausting. It's the terrain, right? So I mean, like, you're having to constantly lift, you know, over top of like stumps and brush and debris and logs and all kinds of crap that I have going on. So like, it's a ton of work. So there's a lot of property to clear too. So it's like hundreds and hundreds of feet of this. So yeah. Anyway, that's the whole story about like why it is that I'm running a little bit behind and stuff. I just needed to actually sit down for a few minutes, and then by the time I looked at the time, it was after 7 o'clock. So I'm guessing, I'm gonna hope that anybody out there can hear me. I know, ding dong, you're a good kitty. Shh, you're a good kitty. And so, can anybody hear me? First of all, let's see if we can somebody send me a message or something that just says test or something on it. Let's see. Let's see if we. Yeah, I know you're good. You're a good kitty. No, I guess not. I guess it doesn't let me do that. Come here, goofy cat. Okay, there we go. All right, so you guys got me 5x5. Awesome. And Ding Dong's gonna go hunt a couple of socks out of the sock thing. So the little, whatever it is, there's a little bin that I have, and he thinks that's hilarious to hunt socks. So the other cat, you know, she runs around and catches. His name is Schrodinger. I call him Ding Dong though. So Schrodinger is his actual name. Ding Dong is just one of the many pet names that I give him. So there you go. Let me turn this down a tiny bit, just a touch. Okay. So anyway, so now that there's a few people that have found me, and I'm, you know, here live and everything. Yeah. So I keep getting these videos, like friends of mine will send me, they'll send me the videos of like all these guys in, like all over the country protesting about the, you know, yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. There was, Bill Murray, that's it. Bill Murray, Pizza, and Luigi. Those are good names for cats, actually, which is awesome. So yeah, I saw those videos of like all the people. There's all the deportations, and there's all these people. And it was something I wanted to actually touch on this, because I've been kind of rolling around in my head for the last like 4 or 5 days. This has been something I've been kind of ruminating on. Does anybody remember The Simpsons? Right, like the early Simpsons, like the good Simpsons, not the Simpsons that we have like, you know, recently, but like the early Simpsons episodes. Remember the early Simpsons episode where there was Apu, and there was this episode he was going to be deported, and you know, in order, you know, he was like wanting to prove that, like, hey, I want to be an American. So he's like wearing like an American flag outfit, and he's got American flags like all over the Quickie Mart, and he's talking to everybody about like you know, about, and he's trying to change his accent from, you know, and it's really amazing that Hank Azaria can pull that off, but he's trying to change his accent the whole bit to fit in, to assimilate. I can't help but notice that is not what we're seeing. It's like they're flying flags from every other country out there. And they're saying, no, hey, you need to be like us, and you need to, it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite of what that episode of The Simpsons was doing. Does anybody remember? Like, I mean, because I remember that pretty distinctly from being when I was a kid, when I saw that. And I thought, yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. But what we're seeing now, like, this doesn't make any sense. This is all about, you know, it's all about them. It's not about the country. All right, it's all about this individualized thing with them. So, dog, a live stream, you are awesome. Thank you. I am doing my best, actually. Like I said, I'm running a little bit late today. It's usually I'm real punctual. I try to be, but as I mentioned, house words are actually technically better late than ever. So there we have it. So that was really it, and or at least that's what I was going to kind of kick off with, which is some of the videos that I've been seeing surfacing the internet, which have been strange. That, and of course all the planes that have been seem to be falling out of the sky, which isn't anything new. I mean, like aviation always has disasters. Just seems like there's a lot more recently. Maybe it's just because we're seeing them more, I don't know, or a lot faster. It is interesting. I mean, well, props to X on this one. I will give X some credit on this. Credit where credit is due. There isn't a news cycle anymore. Now it's just something happens and it's instantaneous. Yeah, the competency crisis. It's getting, it's certainly becoming more common in the trucking world. I mean, those of you guys out there know, I drive a truck. I drive a semi-truck. I own my equipment. I have a big semi-truck. And I haul equipment and among other things. And yeah, it's becoming, it's getting downright dangerous on the roads in some cases for people out there. There was just some, there was just something here. I guess it was here in Texas. Somebody, a friend of mine told me about this, that there was like a hit and run in a semi, right? Like, so the driver like plowed into somebody, I guess, and then drove off and then like abandoned the truck. I don't know that was all that common, even a few years ago. I don't know that was something that really happened all that much. I don't think so. That doesn't seem like something that you would see regularly. What happened in New York? What's going on with that? Elaborate a little bit. Like I said, I've been working all day long. So, for me to be able to actually keep up on all this kind of stuff, it's near impossible. Social media is a hobby for me, not a business, as evidenced by my revenues. I think I got, again, I'm not dissing anybody, but, it was like $40 or something like that. So it's not like I get any big money to do this. And again, no disrespect. Hold on. I would love it if these guys made glass bottles. Nobody makes a glass bottle anymore. It's weird. It's horrible. So I don't know what exactly is all going on. So if there is something interesting in New York, I did see a video where there was some dude who was like, hey, there's no illegals out here. He was on like 6th Avenue or something like that. And he was talking about how there's no illegals out there. $40 over 2 weeks. For all the attention you grab. Yeah, it's it's not much, man. People run from the cops and this is going high speed. Yeah, well, that's just it. You gotta have fun in life, right? And why wouldn't? Think about it. Like, we see all the movies, right? It looks like a lot of fun. There was some guy who there was like a tweet or something a while back where the dude was like, let's skip past the panic room thing, or not panic room, like the escape room kind of thing. Let's just go straight to like high-speed police chases, and it's like, that would be actually a bit more interesting. You definitely have to have cardio down for that. Especially since, inevitably, the car is going to get like, pit maneuvered or something. So then you're going to have to like make a break for it. Is Bitcoin hope in your opinion? Yeah, kind of. So if you haven't seen any of the actual Bitcoin interviews that I've done, I've been on Raj's show and a few others, Marty Brent and so on. But I am a hard currency guy, meaning that like I'm all about. I kind of don't care what you guys pick, what anybody picks. Just pick something that can't be conjured from nothing. Now it happens to be that Bitcoin is probably the hardest currency out there. There's a few little drawbacks, and I don't mean the electricity aspect of that. That's one I shoot down pretty fast, but the technical side of it, and then of course there's also the dust problem, right? If the police can't stop you, you must be on the dust. But these are some of the problems that exist within Bitcoin, and that's okay. There are ways to get around that stuff, I'm sure, but it's something. It's a problem nonetheless. So let's go here and to answer your question though, but is Bitcoin a hope? Yeah, it's a hope in that I think that it's definitely getting people's attention when it comes to the idea of hard money. It's definitely getting people, thankfully, on both the so-called right and the so-called left to start thinking about this kind of stuff. And my hope one day is that people on the left and the right will finally realize, dude, you're being ripped off by the same people. All you people on these so-called clans, you're all being ripped off by the exact same people. It's inflation. It's money printing. It's counterfeiting. It's conjuring dollars out of nothing. And yeah, I mean, maybe people will figure it out one day. I'd like to think so. Let's see here. Trade Bitcoin for something to yeah, that's just it. You know, that's the other thing that I would tell anybody. Like, if you have Bitcoin, try to, you know, lateral into other things that are of like kind. Privacy, I don't know. I mean, I don't have an issue with the privacy aspect of it personally. I mean, no one's been able to find my Bitcoin, so that was the other thing too that I was going to mention, was because somebody asked about tariffs. Like, we'll see what happens. I mean, yeah, the U.S. imports a bunch of stuff. It absolutely does. But I mean, everybody's gonna go tariff back and forth. I don't know. I mean, I'm more concerned about the income tax issue. I'd like to see income taxes, property taxes, and death taxes go away categorically. I think they're wrong. I think property taxes is basically just that is like serfs on the land kind of thing. That's like slavery type shit. So I'd like to see that go away. Income taxes are arbitrary to a great degree, right? I mean, income taxes don't really have any. It really is an arbitrary kind of thing. They just sort of make it up. And then estate taxes or death taxes, those should absolutely go away. That means that you're actually hurting the next generation of your lineage, right? I mean, assuming that you have kids, assuming people actually, get busy on that and actually start producing kids, you may want to leave them something. Now, you don't have to leave them like big piles of money or anything necessarily. And I do believe in the idea of of work ethic and so on. And that one of the best things that you could leave kids is a legacy of at least a work ethic. You can screw a lot of things up, and trust me, people, parents are human. They're just as messed up and fucked up as everybody else out there, right? And parents kind of accept that. It's something that we all have to do. And eventually, your kids, you hope that that your kids like you, when they grow up, as they grow up, they begin to understand that you're just as flawed as everybody else, right? I mean, like, it's the hero worship thing changes slightly, and they're like, yeah, they still admire you and everything, but they do understand that you are just as human as anybody else, and that's important. So, but one of the best things I think that you can leave kids, if you left anything at all, would be just show them what a decent relationship actually looks like, and maybe a work ethic. That's kind of about it. So, they do eventually humanize you, and or you humanize yourself, right? That's how we all are. People, I mean, if you've seen any of my video work, on TikTok, you know that, like, I mean, I'm fond of the Fight Club thing. You people are all singing, all dancing crap of the world. You're all part of the same compost heap. Simultaneously, you are all unique snowflakes. It's a bit of both. So somebody had commented something about I haven't posted. I actually need to update or upload the live stream from last night. So I haven't got around to it on X. But yeah, it is part of the deal that I need to upload that. Somebody was talking about a comment that I made about the industrialized level of hypocrisy, and it's like, yeah, it's becoming pretty bad. With listening to the billionaires, the fake billionaires, and the oligarchs telling you one thing and then doing another. And it's always something to look at. All your ones don't have good historical precedents. Central bank, yeah, that's just it. I think you're talking. Are you talking about the currencies, right? Am I getting that right? Am I assuming? I'm not trying to. I'm trying to do two things here at once on my computer here, and so I'm trying to find that there was something else that I thought was interesting. Oh, it was that nudity thing. Like, what's his name? Kanye, I guess his wife now is like rolling around naked, and that's the new thing. Like, I guess we finally crossed a Rubicon. We no longer clothing optional, right? And that works, right? I mean, like, okay, you know how this all works, right? You guys know how this whole thing works, right? All of us love clothing optional for good-looking people. We recoil in horror, right? When clothing optional, it's most of us, right? Most of us out in the world, we would not want clothing optional. It wouldn't be anywhere as much fun to look at, right? It's sort of like those old protests, right? The protests where it's like all the naked feminist chicks, they tear off all their clothes and they start protesting, and every one of them is like, 400 pounds, and you're like, God damn it, dude, why can't you do this shit in Europe or something like that? I mean, the European chicks tend to be a little hotter, so I mean, it's just terrible how it works that way, but it's the truth. Taxes and currency, yeah, that's what I mean. Okay, so yeah, if you're talking about taxes and currency, then yeah, that's exactly right. Those are both on the list. The list of five, the top 5 things. One is the currency and 5 is the taxes. So you've got in the middle, you've got your birth rates, your small business ownership, and your land and property ownership. They're all in there, but 1 and 5. That's exactly right. So, so there was all of that, and then of course the other question that I always posit to anybody out there is like older cars versus the newer garbage that we're seeing nowadays. Again, if you follow me on X, you see me posting like pictures of older cars, like not old cars, not like Model Ts and so on, not quite that old. Those have their place and they're cool, but that's not what I mean. No. It's more the later model old cars, if that makes any sense. So Chevy C20s, things like that, or the 70s, 60s and 70s F-250s and things of that nature, or any of the cars from the 60s and 70s, right? Old era of muscle cars. Not just because they're cool, although they are, but because also they don't have any bullshit that you can shut them off from space. None of that nonsense. They can't be tracked. That's exactly right. Cars can't be tracked. Ford Rangers, exactly. They can't be tracked, and that's a thing now that then I don't know. I mean, there is going to be probably a parallel economy at some point that is going to emerge, just like it did in the Soviet Union. Eventually, I'll come back to that on the Bitcoin drawbacks. I'll come back to that. Actually, that kind of goes into a little bit of the idea behind what I was talking about with parallel economy. Parallel economies eventually emerge because people can't survive in the real economy or the economy that exists at the time, right? So whatever it is, people can't really survive in it, so they start creating their own economies, and this is where you get your small businesses. You think of them as gangsters. You think of them as or most people think of them as like, oh, they're they're like the Russian mobs. They're not really Russian mob. It's just they're people trying to make it. They're just the good old boys. Never meaning no harm. Beats all you ever saw. Been in trouble with the law since the day he was born, and they running moonshine and things of that nature. Although it doesn't have to be quite as cool as that. It can be just something as simple as I don't know, having products that don't have a bunch of goddamn chemicals in them, right? I mean, what about that, right? I make really good ice cream, for example. I know I look it. I don't make it as much anymore, but I make really good ice cream, and there's no chemicals. I don't put a bunch of crazy shit in ice cream, So yeah, I use the best stuff I can get a hold of. Generally speaking, I'll use the best ice cream comes from goat milk, actually, or from Nubian goat cream. That's probably about the best that you can make. I mean, it's just crazy expensive because you have to get your hands on a lot of cream from a Nubian goat. So, yeah, I mean that's just it. But as far as the hold on, where was that? Drawbacks on Bitcoin. The only drawback, the biggest drawback is that I can see is the amount of it's easy for people to go into their wallet and fish out a $20 bill if they assume they carry a wallet anymore. I mean, or they just have a wad of 20s or something like that. It's easy to go in your pocket and pull out a wad of $20 bills. That's easy to do. Bitcoin's a little harder, and it requires and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It slows down some transactions a tiny bit, in my opinion. Though, then again, I would also point out that I think that maybe we are a little hyper consumptionist, or hyper consumerist in our existence, right? Like there's always a transaction going on, all the time. Maybe that's not good. Maybe we should take pause and not be spending all the time. Maybe spending shouldn't be quite so easy, so that we actually have a little bit of time to think about it. That's the only part. So yeah, to answer your question, like that's the only thing that I can think of that would be a major drawback. As far as like, somebody wanting to steal it or something, it takes a lot more. I mean, you could do what they did to it doesn't support any of that. It doesn't support the Federal Reserve idea or the idea of reserve currencies at all. I think reserve currencies are a terrible idea. They don't work, because there's no country can exist without eventually printing money to the point of worthlessness. And this has been true just throughout lots of history. Eventually they run out of money. They run out of everybody else's money. And then they start wars with each other because they can't afford to pay bills anymore. And then they tell all the young men, oh, it's your patriotic duty to go and die for the king. Usually because it was over some financial issue with some other country. Like a trade deficit or something like that. It's real common. So, Bitcoin ends that kind of stuff. Hard money in general ends that, but Bitcoin ends it a lot more. It ends it like a motherfucker, and the reason it does is because you actually have a ledger that anybody can audit. Unlike gold reserves, not to just trash gold, because gold pitched a hell of a game, dude. Anybody dissing gold, like, man, you don't know history on that. I mean, gold pitched one hell of a game. It really did. I mean, 5,000 odd years, and so I don't diss gold on this at all, but just keep in mind that like the bigger challenge with gold is always something like gold backed. And again, if anybody, for new people, you don't know me, but for people who've been around a little while, you already know what I'm going to say. It happens every single time. Every time something starts with gold backed, it lasts about a weekend, and then there's an emergency, and then they have to like conjure more dollars or more gold-backed currency than there is gold to actually back it, and it happens every single time. Nixon, the ultimate fucker. Yeah, it was, and he that was an unbelievable con, and I think I understand the argument he made to other countries. I think that he made the same argument that I just made right now, which was that like, look, I mean, you guys are all going to go broke too, and eventually you are going to need more. Look, see. The argument works like this. Sooner or later, let's say that you're another country, right? And yeah, that's exactly right. The USD is a shit coin. It's exactly right. But here's the argument goes to the other countries. Let's say that put yourself in Nixon's position, whoever you are out there in the internet, put yourself in his position and think about how you would sell this to other countries, knowing that they're just as screwed as you are. Right? I mean, it's the parent argument, right? That I just made. It's like, they're just as fucked up as everybody else. And that all these other economies are just as screwed up. China's just as screwed. I know that everybody right now on TikTok they're all just falling all over themselves. Like, oh my God, China's the ultimate country. It has all this stuff. Like, that's been kind of debunked by Chinese citizens who have done counter videos saying, dude, you need to get out of the city and you will find nothing but endless poverty for miles. Like, yeah, that's kind of how that works. It's not too different in the US, actually. So it's not too different in most countries when it comes to that. I mean, like, there was this Brazilian girl that talked about this all the time, that she's a TikToker who was from Brazil. She immigrated to the US legally a long time ago. And she points out, like, people go to Brazil and they say, oh my God, it's this wonderful paradise. Yes, because you're staying in the wonderful paradise section of Brazil. You haven't gone into anywhere in Brazil because you probably won't come back. That's how bad it is. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty important to think about it like that. So Nixon's argument would have been something to the effect of, we know you guys are just as screwed as everybody else, and eventually you're going to need someone there in your corner to show up, with foreign aid. And that's where all this bullshit comes from. It's you know, hey, you prop up our dollar, and you know when you know it's the argument. You ever see that movie? It's an old movie. It's an old movie from the '90s, right? I mean, you guys ever? I think it was called The Professional, and I cannot remember the name of the actor. I know it has Natalie Portman in it, you know, when she was like a kid. But I'm talking about, like, I cannot remember Jean Pierre. I can't remember. Anyway, whatever. Okay, so this movie and stuff, and you know, the I think it's Danny Aiello plays the mob guy, the mob boss, and he's always telling him, like, oh, you don't want me to give you your money right now, man, you know, because you can have money, you're going to lose it, you're going to spend it on something you're not really going to need, you know, you don't want to put it in a bank because the banks get knocked off, and you're going to lose your money. And he just kind of does this snow job on this guy, this hitman, who doesn't really understand money all that well. That's effectively the argument that Nixon makes to these countries is, you know, hey, just keep using U.S. dollars and we'll sort you out. You know, when the time comes, you know, we'll be there for you and we'll get you. You know, we'll make sure that your despotic regime, you know, isn't deposed, right? Unless you go against us, then your despotic regime is going to be. And then we're gonna send in freedom fighters and what have you, and we'll do the Gaddafi thing. Just start your own bank, right? So that's how it works, right? There's a book by oh man, I can hear John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. You know, where it's like it points out it's exactly how it works. Right? You know, you show up and you offer a bunch of money. Here, take the money. You know, lead or silver. You know, what do you want? And it's not even silver. That's the problem. And so Nixon makes this argument and says, yeah, hey, look, the dollar is going to be the ultimate shit coin, but you guys get to get on the ground floor of the ultimate shit coin. That's really what it is. That's the argument he made. You know, like, you know, check it out. Get it on this Haktua coin, or what the hell's that other nonsense coin that like, you know, that just popped up and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's the same argument. You know, and that's effectively what he did, and it worked really well. It worked out fucking awesome. A bunch of these countries, he did. Gary Oldman's awesome in everything. I don't think there's anything in that he actually sucked in. So, you know, the movie might suck, but Gary Oldman's always awesome. So yeah, I mean, like, this is just it. You know, like you're gonna let your friends in on the ground floor, so-called, of a shit coin called the U.S. dollar, and now the shit coin is kind of running long-term hold. Yeah, very long-term. Like so long-term that on a long enough timeline, you know, everybody's lifespan goes to zero, right? that long. That is a problem, actually. It's one of the criticisms I actually have for the Bitcoin people. It's an honest criticism. The idea of when they keep pushing the idea of like low time preference kind of thing. Like, dude, you're not going to live forever. We may live a long time, and we may certainly do our best to try and be as healthy as possible. And, you know, and we listen to some of the guys, you know, like that tell us, hey, eat healthy foods, get exercise, don't smoke, things like that, you know, like these kinds of things. And those are good, and maybe those do extend life, but it's not eternal. So, yeah, so that is a challenge. No idea what that is. So. Yeah. So anyway, instead of getting in on the ground floor of the ultimate shitcoin, now we're at the end of that. We're at the end where it's like, okay, how are we going to get? What is the end? What is our plan for all of this? What is your out? What's the exit strategy for all this? I don't think anybody has one. I really don't. I don't think anybody has an actual debt spiral. Yeah, that's just kind of it. Last one out, shut the lights off. Maybe I guess that's our plan. The big print, it's possible too. You know, the trick is going to be it's offset slightly, and it's offset because of the demographics, because of the birth rate decline. So because we don't have the birth rates to supporting this, you will see prices probably just start going down a little bit just because of lack of demand. Because there just isn't enough people to support it. So if you see, and that would be organic, that would be natural, that would be what you want to see is a natural price decline, not a decline that's manipulated, not a bunch of manipulated nonsense. And so yeah, we'll see if it actually happens. You know, we'll see how this all plays out. We'll see what the trade war between Mexico, U.S. and Canada. is we'll see what they actually what I'm not sure what the actual end game for that is, because it's just eventually what we're going to do. Like they want to put a tariff, so then there's a counter tariff, and they're like, okay, so we can do, how about we do tariffs of 1,000,000% on both sides? I mean, yeah. I mean, that's just it. And prices could go through the roof, priced in dollars. It's entirely possible. We'll see. Again, we'll see what happens. The deportations, for example. Let's say that the U.S. let's say that Trump actually does pull this off. And again, credit where credit's due. You guys know I don't play favorites on this, and I'll level criticism of absolutely anybody. I don't care what your political rank is or what family you're born to or whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference. I'll level criticism where it's necessary. And if Trump actually pulls this off and gets a whole bunch of people to self-deport, and we get, the estimates are somewhere between, I've heard conflicting numbers. I've heard between 20 million and 60 million illegals. I've seen people speculating it could be even worse than that. It could be even higher. Let's say they pull that off. Well, it's going to be pretty difficult to cover up all that commercial real estate that's sitting empty. Every day I drive past buildings I'm in Houston, Texas. And every day for anybody who knows, Houston's a big city. It's like number 4 or number 5. It's one of the largest cities in the US. And it's also extraordinarily diverse. It truly is, I think, the most diverse city in terms of the amount of languages. But there's 170 languages spoken here, or something like that. It's crazy. But every day, I drive on the 8. I'll drive past these buildings, right? And these buildings are empty. You can see right in the windows. You can see all the blinds kind of hanging all cattywampus. You can see there's nothing in there. And if the sun hits them just right, particularly like on a day-to-day, today was really nice outside. And it was, it was like 72 and sunny. It was beautiful. And you can when it sunsets, you can look right through these buildings. And there's nothing in these buildings. And I don't mean just like 1 or 2 floors on the top where it's like, it's the expensive real estate. No. I mean the whole fucking building is empty. There's no one in there. There's no need for these buildings. There's no reason to have this much, and it costs a bunch of money to tear them down to try and repurpose the land. And of course, what would you do with the land? Build an RDC? You mean next to the 5 other RDCs that have already been built? So what do you do? I mean, there's this. There was a TikToker, one of the landlord bros. He was one of these Airbnb bros, and he was talking about how no. The secret isn't lowering your prices. The secret is to raise your prices, and it gives the illusion of value. That only works, if you actually have people that have money to pay for that stuff. It doesn't work when people are broke. When wages aren't keeping up with anything, that theory doesn't work. It just doesn't hold water. No, it means that you have to actually bring prices down so that people can actually participate in what it is that you're trying to sell. In other words, if you're going to sell a product, you have to be able to sell a product people can actually afford. And instead, what he was advocating to all of his, the rental bros and all the Airbnb people was increase your prices. Just raise your prices and just pretend that it's all worth, gold. I'm like, my God, dude, like the ultimate boomer class. Like, holy shit. Let's see here. Isn't there still dollar demand? Of course there is. There's dollar demand globally. There absolutely is. That's what they've been trading on. They've been trading on the idea that, so the H-1Bs, for example, they're trading on the idea of the H-1Bs coming to the U.S., for example, and they're earning dollars. Well, of course they're earning dollars because to them, dollars buy more in their country than it buys here domestically. That's how it works. That's just how it was. Just like the TikTok videos where the kids are like, oh my God, Mexico's only paying this much money, this many dollars for eggs, and the U.S. is paying this many dollars for eggs. Like, yes, the dollar has more purchasing power in Mexico still. It still does. In a lot of countries, it still does. Ponzi scheme being propped up. Yeah, that's standard. They always have to do that. Bitcoin going to eat up real estate eventually. Eventually, it probably will. It will eventually, just because you're going to have the. I think that you will eventually have the real estate people, the real estate bros, finally have this sort of aha moment where they realize that the costs of babysitting all these properties that are constantly, always and forever getting reassessed in the so-called valuations. And it's always these fantasy land valuations. Any property owners out there knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's anybody out there who owns a house or something like that, they'll tell you these stories about my property taxes went up. And they didn't, not the property taxes went up. What happened was the county went in and they reassessed the house. And they said, oh, well, we think that your house is worth, $600,000 or some crazy shit like that. And in the meantime, you're like, dude, I don't know that I could sell it for $600,000. People are starting to question that, right? Because you have to remember, for every seller, there has to be a corresponding buyer. So this is the problem. So if you're in real estate, especially if you have these big commercial buildings and you're just sitting there watching a building just eat you alive because it's empty, there's nobody in it, it's falling apart, and you're having to constantly board up the broken windows on it. This is a true story, by the way. This, like, I drive past these buildings. The bottom windows are all boarded up of the building because people break the windows and they sneak into the building and they just start living in the building because there's nobody there, right? I mean, so you can just move in. The squatters move into the buildings. And so it's like, then they go in there, they flush them out, and then they board the, it's like, that's just what, so that's not very appealing to anybody who would actually, why would you want to lease a building or a floor of a building or even like a couple of offices if the downstairs looks like that, right? That's not a very good image for your clients if they're going to show up. And there's just dozens of these buildings. It's not like it's one building in a crappy neighborhood. No, there's like a whole row of them, man. There's just, and they're right on the freeway. They have their own exits and everything. It's incredible. Section 8 guy is annoying. Yeah, people don't understand how a Section 8 works. Section 8 is just a bailout for landlords. It's a Section 8 housing, and this is a lot of times my poorer followers don't understand when I say this kind of stuff, and nobody freaks out and starts furiously typing shit with their thumbs faster than some of my lefty followers on TikTok, because I have a lot of commie followers on TikTok and everything too. So I love those guys, but it's like they freak out when they don't understand this stuff because it sounds counterintuitive, but it's like, dude, you don't understand. The landlords should be losing their ass on these buildings. They should be losing fortunes on all these buildings. Section 8 comes in and says, the government comes and says, oh, we'll print a bunch of money and pay you these inflated rents. So an apartment that should be renting by rights for like $200 a month, I didn't stutter, like seriously, like $150, $200 a month is probably all that apartment should go for. Especially given the state of usually the buildings. These are not exactly the nicest of buildings, right? We all know the buildings we're talking about. Okay, these aren't exactly like places where you would want to. It's for people who don't have any money, right? There's no criticism. It's just they don't have any money. So these places should be selling, renting for like $150, $200 a month because it's really all they're worth. And the government comes in and says, "Oh yeah, we'll subsidize it and we'll pay you $1,200." Like, dude, that landlord, and of course the landlord buys the building based on those inflated rents. And so it creates this one-way ratcheting up. Oh, look how much money this building's worth. That building isn't worth shit. I wouldn't give you $25 for it. It would cost me more money to tear it down than the property's even worth. And it's the truth, but they don't want to hear this stuff. Everybody's like, I used to do business with, I used to rent a truck spot from this dude. I called him the ultimate fucking boomer, man. He was like the proto boomer. Everything he had was just worth gold. He wanted $1 million for every goddamn thing. But it's just kind of how it was. He thought everything was worth a fortune. And it's like, dude, this is garbage. And it's going to cost me more money to haul it away than any of this shit is worth. Even the scrap value isn't worth the kind of shit that you're trying to get for this stuff, right? Like I couldn't even scrap it. The aluminum price per pound, I couldn't even get, what you're trying to get out of this. It's just, come on. I mean, it's just people like that. It really is. It's that delusion that goes along with that. So yeah, the Section 8 people that push this shit, yeah, it's bullshit. Better shitcoin than local currency. That's exactly right. Folks who monetize real estate going into Bitcoin, probably. I mean, again, like I said, at a certain point, the numbers catch up. At a certain point, that realization hits, and they realize that you don't have to babysit Bitcoin. You can put Bitcoin, in cold storage, and it just sits there. There's no taxes. There's no arbitrary taxes on any of that stuff. And for those of you out there, well, there's capital gains. Why the fuck is anybody paying taxes on Bitcoin? I don't ask that rhetorically. I'm actually asking, like, why the fuck are you doing any of that shit? Dude, Bitcoin can be lost, right? In fact, you can take a deduction. You should be deducting that. You should be, my Bitcoin vanished. That's a loss. I need to declare that as a loss of my taxes. There you go. I don't know why anybody's still paying any fucking money. And not only, and on top of that, actually, not to be a complete dick about this whole thing, why the fuck is anybody paying taxes to these assholes anyway? That's another one. I don't ask that rhetorically. Like all it is fear, right? That's all it is. It's everybody's afraid of what could possibly happen. They're pretty busy right now. They're running around. They're rounding up illegals. This is the perfect time to tell them to get bent. It really is. Where would we be if we stayed on gold? Boy, that's a great question. Where would we be indeed? Let's speculate. That's a fun question. I think that in the 70s, in 1971, by 1972, Nixon probably would have been impeached, and everybody would have been angry. You had a bunch of World War II vets that were all heavily armed in the 70s. Young people don't understand this, but there were a lot of machine guns in the country in the 70s, right? That nobody did the 1934 amnesty bullshit, right? And the 1968 so-called Safe Streets Act bullshit. There were a lot of people who didn't fuck with that. I say this as someone who worked in the pawn business and in the gun industry for a long time. And you every now and again, you'd get like these unregistered war trophy machine guns. There was a lot of that shit. And a lot of angry World War II guys who, if they showed up at the bank and they said, hold on, what do you mean I have no money? Yeah, that wouldn't have gone well. Keep in mind, World War II guys back in the 70s would have been in their 50s, right? So they'd have been in their prime. So they'd be angry, cantankerous, and have real trigger time. So, yeah, that wouldn't have gone over well. So they had to come up with some kind of bullshit to slake all this nonsense, right? So there you have it. But I mean, as far as like, are they going to be able to pull this off? Yeah, exactly. Had grenade. That's what I'm saying. Like, that was not uncommon in the 70s, even up into the 80s and 90s. That wasn't uncommon that guys still did that kind of stuff. So they knew that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, if we stayed on the gold standard, it would have all collapsed back then, and then the economy would have had to be healthy. There would have had to actually be a real economy. Just no different than, what was it? I can't remember the exact year that the continental dollar collapsed, but I know that the Coinage Act, I think, was like 1792, if I remember right. And yeah, it's because the currency collapsed. And you'd actually have to have a real economy at that point. You'd actually have to have an honest weights and measure. So, because an economy is just people, right? An economy is just you, me, everybody, right? That's the economy. It isn't some building somewhere. It's just all of us engaging in commerce and division of labor and shit like that, right? That's all an economy actually is. So, in terms of the gold standard, just my speculation, I think that it would have collapsed. I think that the economy would have had to adjust itself very quickly. I do think that it would have been helped by the boomers because it was a baby boom, right? So you did have the advantage, the distinct advantage in the 70s that there was a lot of coming of age. You had a lot of younger people that were starting to become adults, and there would have been plenty to do, right? It's not like now. If we went to a gold standard now, along with decreased demand, you'd see radical deflation, like almost like bone breaking deflation of everything, right? It would almost feel like a major depression, even though you have a hard currency. It would feel like that. Now, I'm not saying it would be like that. It would actually take a little time to dig your way out of that, but it would feel like that, especially for as used to everything, that the state provides that everybody has gotten. Lots of people have gotten very used to this kind of stuff. They've gotten very comfortable with this. I just saw there was some young lady that was complaining about that they're getting rid of DE&I. Right? Well, that means that if they get rid of DEI, they're talking about getting rid of women in the workplace, because why would a company hire a woman, a premenopausal woman, as opposed to a man? Because man's probably not going to take maternity leave, right? Since we have two genders again, he's probably not going to take, maternity leave. Therefore, he might take a couple of weeks off or something like that, but we're not going to like have to retrain people. She makes a point, and it's like, you know what? I don't know what to tell you, but that's the truth. I like biology screwed you, not humanity. It's whatever, But yeah, I think that the economy would have had to reset, and I think that it would have been significantly better. And I think that also with something like that, there wouldn't be the level of taxation we would see now, because the government just could not have grown. It couldn't have. If you remember, in a hard currency environment, it's toxic to the idea of government growth, or even giant mega corporate growth. Any of these things, they can't grow. All the giant companies, there's the idea that says that there's the so-called capitalist story, and I use the term capitalist advisedly, but let me you all know the story. Small business starts up, people flood into the small business, they start patronizing, the business starts to grow. Correct. Those businesses will grow as large as basically their customer base will allow them to grow. At a certain point, though, there's a tipping point, where it's like, okay, now your product, it's going to cost you more money to produce the product because you're having to hire more and more people in the middle to manage all the people that you just hired, and you start adding more and more costs. Now other costs go down, other costs start dropping, but there's some static costs that just continue to go up. And especially when you start hiring people and you start filling their heads with, hey, if you work hard, you'll get ahead here, we'll promote you. How are you supposed to do that with everybody? Again, that's not mathematically possible. It's just like the insurance argument. Pay these premiums, and then when you have a big disaster, we'll pay out millions of dollars in claims. Bullshit. It's not possible. It's not possible. All right, the math just doesn't support it. So it's the same problem. And eventually the companies, in a hard currency environment, that exact same company, what would end up happening with it is it would just slowly start to deteriorate. Eventually the outgo would exceed the income, the upkeep would be the downfall, and that big company would return ashes to ashes, dust to dust. That's exactly what would happen. And then other small businesses would pick up the pieces. That is by the way, that is a normal, healthy economy that I just described to you. That is normal and healthy. That's, if you want to think of it like, the EKG, the beat, like, dude, that's normal. You don't want a flatline economy. That's Keynesianism. That whole idea of like, well, let's keep the economy flat. You mean a zombie economy? Because that's exactly what you described. An economy with no pulse, a Frankenstein fucking monster economy. Yeah, that's what you did. That's basically what Keynes described. So that's what I would think. I think that we would actually be in a much better position. I think actually the U.S. would be in a much better position overall had they just not bailed out all the banks in 2008, 2009, 2010. Just not bailing out all the banks. I think that alone would have done an enormous amount. You would have had a huge correction in the marketplace, which is long overdue, followed by, corrective action, right? Then businesses start realizing, oh, okay, we can't do that. So we're going to have to go ahead and actually do it the right way. Does it drop 15%? I'm not sure what we're talking about here. 100% taxation theft. It is certainly at this point stuff. I'm a bit behind on some of the comments here, so I'm trying to get caught up. Markets are deflationary. They are naturally in a normal economy. It is natural. Prices naturally go down because people rush into a space, and then they find out that they're on the ass end of the pyramid, and they have to start lowering prices. That's just reality. I mean, there's a King of the Hill episode that covers that. Actually, for real, believe it or not, there's actually a King of the Hill episode that covers that, where Hank and his friends have to go shoot all the emus. Because a dude bought I know people who did that, by the way, who bought these emus at the peak of the market, and then the bottom fell out of it. That is normal and healthy. That's how you learn to not do shit like that, right? That's how you learn to get a feel for the marketplace. You get your marketplace legs, so to speak, right? You get that from losing ass tons of money. It's the truth. You will pay for education somewhere. Just, are you going to pay for it, from somebody trying to, just talk at you? Or are you going to go out there and learn something? Let's see here. Income city grows with exponentially. It does, and that is a major problem. I work for a Fortune 500 company going through the exact same scenario. Yeah, there was, I had a customer where I was, I was an Uber driver. I had my restaurant, and I drove Uber at nighttime for like a year to rotate some money, because Uber isn't really a profitable business. It actually costs you, it's just like a low interest rate loan on your own depreciation of the vehicle. It's pretty much all it is. But it worked at the time. And so while we were getting going, that was what we did. And yeah, I remember having conversations with guys like that, where I would have just, if they ever engage in a conversation with me, and I usually kept my mouth shut for the longest time, but if somebody directly engaged me, I'll talk to them. And we would have these kinds of conversations, and guys would say, like, they would say, like, dude, yeah, I mean, I'm running into this exact same problem in my company, like everything you just described, like where they fired all the expensive people who knew what they were doing, and because they were expensive, and they replaced them with people who really didn't know what they were doing, or they moved people up who didn't have any proper training. They got promoted to the top level of incompetency, and they just left them there. And so now you have people who don't know why they're doing something, right? It's more important. It's in certain situations, it's almost more important to know why you're doing something than it is how to do something. It's pretty critical. That's the experience aspect of that. So, and then eventually the companies just start fading. I remember there was a trucking company guy. There was an executive from a trucking company, which I didn't tell him I was actually I was just listening. But I was talking with him, in the abstract. I was glossing over the fact that I was a truck driver and owned my own truck. I was glossing over this, and that I had a lot of experience with it. And I just mentioned it, and he was talking about, like, he says, yeah, we've hired these guys, and they seem like they're inexpensive, and then they go out there, and then they roll a tanker truck, and then we have a giant cleanup, a hazmat cleanup, that's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, followed by hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, followed by the inevitable lawsuits from everybody else, that was out there, or anybody else that was damaged, or if it spills onto a private road or something like that. So now we have an angry property owner who's now going to also sue on top of that. And so, yeah, we saved whatever, $12,000 a year by hiring this guy, or worse, they saved $40,000 a year by hiring, these guys. And then it ends up costing them millions on the back end, because many of these companies, they have insurance, but it's usually reinsurance. So it's like that they have to cover the first 5 or 10 million, depending on the size of the company. They have to cover the first, between $1 and $10 million if it's catastrophic kind of thing. They have these high deductibles, right? Because otherwise the premiums would be crazy, right? I mean, imagine owning maybe like $1 billion trucking firm and trying to have a $10,000 deductible. Your premiums would be crazy. You'd be spending probably, $3 million a month in premiums or something, probably more. So yeah, that's what ends up happening with that kind of stuff. So, but we were talking about this. He says, yeah, it's becoming a major problem. And by the way, that was 5 years ago. That conversation, that was 5 years ago. It's gotten worse now. So, like, that's why I post the trucking report periodically. Every now and again, I'll go into it and I'll talk about it with the guys who are interested in the truck driving sector. But there's a lot of drivers out there that, there's more drivers that follow me now than ever did before in the past. Most people who drove trucks never really followed me because they didn't know who I was. But it's the same thing. It's like now, not that I'm somebody famous, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, a lot of people didn't know I drove a truck unless they see the filters, in the background and stuff. And if if they're old school and they actually have a Caterpillar engine or something like that, that doesn't have all the DEF bullshit. So, but yeah, that's what's going on there. So, anyway, I'm not sure what other stuff there is going on in the world and stuff. Everything, it's. I feel like that Camacho guy. Everything is bad. We're running out of French fries and burrito coverings. The bungees? I don't know what that means. Sorry. Puts on PE. Yeah, that's it. What did I give away? Hold on. I missed something. Oh yeah, the bungees, yes, the rubber snubbers or whatever guys are calling them. I always call them bungees. I've heard others call them snubbers, but yeah, the bungees hanging from the back, and my water separator filters, my water separation filters, my fuel filter, and my big ass oil filter. So I do my own oil changes, so it saves a lot of money. It saves like basically about $200 to do your own oil changes. It's not the numbers aren't even close. It's like $200, and it only takes me about 25 minutes to change the oil and filters. I've got the fuel filters down to like pit crew level on that. I've had my filters go bad on the road so many times that I'll pull off this. I have to pull off to an off ramp or something like that. Go across the on ramp side, pull the hood, pull the fuel filters off, prime the new fuel filters, put them back on there, and take off. Because a truck will just lose power. Because diesel nowadays sucks. The quality of the diesel is absolutely horrible. There's I don't know what the hell they're doing, but the diesel quality is just fucking terrible right now, and it has been for quite a while. And so I don't run additives anymore. I haven't done anything like that. In case anybody's wondering, like, nope, I don't run any additives. I just run regular diesel and stuff, and just keep my injectors as clean as possible. But and don't put waste oil in your fuel tanks and stuff. I don't have a truck that old. That's an old 3406B engine that you can do that. You put the waste oil in your tanks and you have the black smoke. It's really awesome. The stuff that everybody freaks out about, not realizing that it's unburned carbon, dude. That's all it does. It settles back to earth. It doesn't go into the atmosphere. That's not how that works. It's not how diesel engines work. So, but yeah, anyway, so that's kind of what I had going on today. Pretty mellow, nothing, heavy and technical or anything like that. The only other thing that I saw that I already commented on was the whole Jon Stewart interview. I don't know who the hell he was fucking talking to. Some senator or something like that about the goddamn gun control issue. Taxes, by the way. Yeah, diesel costs more because of taxes. It's barely refined. Diesel is what is it? In the cracking tower, I think it goes like this. You get tar on the very bottom, and then you get like... I think there's like 2 or 3 other, asphalt. Actually, asphalt's at the bottom, and there's tar, and then there's other stuff, and then kerosene, and then diesel. It's like it's barely refined. The hyper refined stuff that's way at the top of the cracking tower. That shit's expensive, or should be. Your gases and what have you. But as far as like for diesel, which is incredibly stable and barely refined, yeah, it should be really freaking cheap. Diesel's not really a byproduct. Actually, unleaded gas, it was sort of if I remember the story right, unleaded gasoline was the byproduct of creating diesel. And unleaded gasoline, of course, has much higher octane, right? That's why, it's why top fuel, funny cars aren't run on diesel. They run them on, like, now it's all nitromethane and what have you. But back then it was just, 108 octane gas, or 100 octane gas, which is what they still use in aviation, actually. That was another one too. Why aren't we pushing for more private aviation? It is. It's the taxes we're gonna save the planet by giving Al Gore a bunch of fucking money. Don't even have to turn the engine off. No, I know. Depends on what the weather is. I'll idle my engine for heat if it's really cold. It's got to be really cold though. Otherwise I'll just go to sleep, and it'll be like super duper cold, and that's fine. You wake up inside the cab. Your water's frozen. It's because it's like 14 degrees inside the cab. Especially if you're in like Rollins, Wyoming, or something like that, or one of those high altitude, high desert Wyoming truck stops or something like that, where it's just fucking cold. Because I go west all the time. I go west, northwest all the time. So if you ever see that rat rod bullshit, the 379 that I drive, if you ever see that thing, that's me going northwest actually, and then bringing equipment back. Usually, high-speed burn through Wyoming stuff. I'm able to stretch my legs a bit there, so I get up to about 85 miles an hour. So I've got my engine tuned, my RPMs tuned run, to run about 80, 85 miles an hour and keep my RPMs right around 1450. So, recycling, it's a huge one. Unless it's metals. The metals are actually, that's worth it for the scrap, but yeah, as far like recycling plastic is total bullshit. It could be used for other stuff, I suppose, but I don't know about the idea about recycling necessarily. It ends up costing more money than it's worth, as I understand. So saith Penn and Teller. There was an old show on Showtime years ago, and I saw a couple of it was called Bullshit. Was actually the name of the show. Some of you may remember it. And they actually debunked they did the math on recycling, and they're like, dude, these numbers just the math don't math, dude. So, fuck, where the hell was I going with all that? I have to scroll back and find because I was actually in the middle of something, and I actually lost my train of thought. You guys get me thinking about other crazy shit. Yeah, I mean, so I figured I would do this live stream anyway for people, because people ask about it periodically, and I spend a lot more video time on TikTok and everything, but I have been trying to figure out if I can do more live stuff on X, just because there are a lot of people on X who don't go over to TikTok and stuff because they've been convinced by libs of TikTok. No, it's a bunch of Tide Pod eating, dancing doctor dorks and shit like that. It's like, most of TikTok actually, at least on my feed, is welding tips and like woodworking shit, carpentry and stuff. That's like most of the shit that I see is like me stopping. I'll never not stop and watch that guy. There's a guy that he's out in the wilderness, and he builds these shelters out of like just the elements around him. He has like a hand saw and and he goes out there and he cuts down all this and he edits together these they're high speed. They're like 10 minutes long, but they're sped way up. They're like probably 4 or 5 times speed. and he builds like these little shelters with potbelly stoves and all kind of stuff. Like, I'll never not stop and watch those. Those are just addicting to watch. Like, man, this is really cool. And especially when we have it's like, I think that there's a difference between, and I've said this for a long time, there's a difference between being homeless and being houseless, right? Those are two different things. Homelessness is a government program. Houselessness is just whether or not you have the skills to actually build some kind of dwelling. And because when I go to Portland, for example, I'll see these little shanty towns kind of everywhere, like in Portland, or there's RVs with tarps and shit over them, and they're just kind of everywhere, and they're called homeless. Like, well, yeah, they're homeless only because they don't own any property in which to put that stuff, right? In the meantime, I just saw some dude on TikTok that was this guy who's in Arizona. I may respond to it because this dude's in Arizona and he's like, I own 20 acres in Arizona. I own 20 acres. I've purchased 20 acres. If I put my RV on the 20 acres, the boomers in that neighborhood, right, will call the police and they'll have me fined and they'll lien my property and all this kind of stuff, even though you own the property, but you're not allowed to put an RV there. While you build something else, right? Lots of people do that. In Texas, that's everywhere, right? Like you go out someplace and somebody will put like a little mobile home or something like that, but it's usually they're building something, all right? It happens a lot. It's sort of a temporary situation. And there's this dude who talks about this, and I can't think of his name, Joel Tiger or something like that. Anyway, he's in Arizona, has the same issue. What he found a way around that. He's like, oh, well, no, I don't live here. I am the security guard, and this is my security guard mobile command unit. That actually flew in court. So, yeah, there you go. There's a hack right there for you guys, for you land guys that are like, why can't I put my mobile home out there? Don't do a mobile home, do a motor home, or do like a trailer and call it your mobile command unit, and that you are a security guard that is keeping an eye on the equipment that's being used to build stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's I can't think of what, there's another guy who does homesteading. That's all his videos are. It's just him and his family showing the stuff that they do to homestead, right? Because it's a burgeoning, I did a real estate video, I don't know, like 4 or 5, 6 days ago, something like that, where I told real estate agents, and I mentioned this, I said, hey, if you're an agent or a broker and you're in the industry, you may want to start looking for properties that are vacant properties, and start trying to talk sense into these old boomers and some of these companies that own all this property, and start getting them to, number one, bring their prices down to a reasonable number. Number two, start talking to them about like owner financing at a reasonable percent, like 1 to 2% interest. I'm not joking. You can put the price a little higher and get 1 to 2%, but it locks it in at least. And then people, they can pay it off faster, right? Because you can always pay it off. I mean, my mortgage is 10 years. That's it. I paid off quickly, right? And if I could pay it off faster, I will, depending on how things go. But my point is that there's a market for that. And all these real estate people that are trying to like get you to buy a bunch of garbage houses built by all these, the cheapest labor the Home Depot parking lot has to offer. Yeah, dude, it used to offer. But yeah, I'm just like, dude, you should be looking at like maybe going after that market, because it's an untapped market, and there's a lot of people right now that are trying to get the fuck out of the cities. And there's tons of people that are trying to get out of the cities. There's tons of people that are trying to get away from all this shit. They're trying to get away from all these things that are out there. It's not some small number either. It's lots of people. Virtually everyone I know at this point now is trying to figure out how they can get away from all this and put a little distance between their neighbors. I don't mean like in some ridiculous sense where they want to be out on like a section of land or something like that all by themselves. Put the house in the center of a section of land or something like that. Cool though that would be, that's not what most people are after. They're, like, dude, 3 to 5, 10 acres kind of thing. There's a lot of people they're not really, just something where they can be sustainable, and that the land has to be unrestricted. No bullshit. No nonsense from the county. No bullshit like that. So just wild fucking west. That solves a lot of homelessness right there, because then you at least have a home to go. Now, as to whether or not there is a building on that is up to you. So homelessness and dwellinglessness are two different things, right? It's just a matter of getting our affairs in order. So if you've got people like in Portland, for example, which is what started this whole thing, the people in Portland, they live in these RVs and everything. It's just they don't have a place to park them, right? So they just park them on the streets or park them wherever. It's like, yeah, maybe have them park them someplace else. I don't know. If it's not like there isn't a lot of vacant land. You can't bullshit a bullshitter on this one, man. I'm a truck driver. Dude, there is vacant land all over this fucking country. I mean, dude, like there's nothing. There's millions of acres of absolutely nothing out there in a declining demographic. We're in a declining demographic, and there is a lot of acreage out there. Shouldn't be difficult to figure this out. It's, like I saw the Trump thing where he's like, we need to, we're going to take back the 200,000 acres of farmland that China has and give it to who? What? I mean, you're going to give it to BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, some combination of the three, Gil Bates. You can't say his real name on the internet, I guess. Like, I don't know. Someone told me that you can't say if you like they just cut your feed if you say his actual name. So I've made up a new name for him, Gil Bates. There we go. So you're going to give it to him? I mean, like where really would this land go? Yes, buddies. Yeah, no shit. I mean, so yeah, there is a market for that, I think, and there are a lot more people that are really starting to get in tune with the idea, not necessarily of the tiny house thing. The tiny house thing was, in my opinion, was kind of a fad. You can build a barn, what I would colloquially refer to as a barn-dominium. Most people refer to those now and stuff, but you don't have to necessarily do a barn-dough like a steel building kind of thing. You don't have to necessarily do that. You can still do a 2x6 exterior. It's not, or you can do, concrete block, not concrete block. What is it? ICF, I think it is. It's the Legos. You put together these giant Legos and then you fill them with concrete. It's pretty cool. Then it's pig proof then. Concrete houses are pig proof. They can't just like blast through there and stuff. Not only that, if you got out a little bit of stuff, then you put a gate up. You put a fence, a gate, all that kind of stuff, landmines, shit like that, IEDs everywhere. Yeah, I mean, then they can't fuck with you anymore. So No, like you don't want to do something like that. Hide booby traps. Even if they catch you and stuff, then they're pawing through all your stuff, you know, even with have their warrants and shit like that and stuff. They blow the house up. Fucking awesome, man. That's the way, video that shit too. Some of us have had a lot of time to think about this shit. You know, and had a lot of time to kind of plan out how, yeah, a no-knock raid would not be a good idea. You might find yourself in a bottleneck that there's no way out. Once you go in, you trip the sensors. You know, not even actually. I wouldn't use anything electronic. I would do it all on pulleys. I do it all on counterbalances and pulleys and shit like that. No electronics, no bullshit to shut off from space. Nothing. Go old school. Go old school on all these fucking people. These fucking people don't know shit. You know, go old school on them. So, you know, you could even get like theatrical about it and stuff. Get a giant boulder and have them chase him down a hallway and squish him. I don't know. Whatever the fuck, you know, you like this snake pits and shit. You know, make them play the bones to get through. You know, like they have to play the pipe organ made of bones. I mean, why not, right? I mean, you know, if you're going to take a bunch of people out, why not do it in some style, right? I mean, why not some panache? Why not something that's interesting, something funny? You know, sorry, man, your SWAT kit isn't going to save you from all the hornets' nests. I'm gonna, you know, I have no problem at all cultivating fucking hornets. And this is South Texas, man. We actually have bees. There's wasps everywhere down here, and I don't mean, you know, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. I'm talking about like the actual insects, right? Those fuckers suck. Okay. Especially when you know when one of them's dropped on you. So, you know, just somewhere to think about this kind of stuff, man. This is the kind of shit I think about when I'm sitting on the can. So, a mode full of gators. Yeah, no kidding. There's a lot. You know, what is it? Amos Moses, the song Jerry Reed, right? You know, the Louisiana sheriff, you know, goes into the bayou to hunt down Amos and stuff, and doesn't come back. You know? Like, yeah, that's how it works, man. We all saw Snatch. It takes 16 pigs in one sitting to get rid of a 200-pound corpse. You know, So yeah, there you go. There's plenty of food for thought for you guys, you know, so for everybody that showed up here and stuff. I'm surprised it's been, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know how X works. I've only done these lives like a couple of times. So so down here at the bottom of the screen, I know you can't see my finger, but there you go. Down here at the bottom of the screen, there's a number. It says 552. What does that mean? Is that the number of people that are here, or the number of like, is it, you know, is that what it actually means? Because you know, like I said, I'm a little new to the way that they do it. So, and there's not as much data, you know, like, it's weird if I do something live on TikTok, there's like, you'd have to see it. It's like it's like a glass cockpit on an airplane. There's so much fucking data that I have no idea what any of that stuff means. Let's see here. I'm watching a new series, Landman. I have not. It is active viewers. Wow. Okay, I got it right. I hate it's wrong kind of ask. Yeah, no kidding. I've only seen a few clips of Landman. I don't watch a whole lot of TV. So I don't have a lot of time. I'm doing a lot of stuff and everything. So I don't really have a chance to get into it. I will try and look it up and at least watch a few episodes, just because a lot of people seem to be talking about it, and like, okay, well, I mean, if it's any good, you know, I'm kind of particular. I like stuff that actually has, you know, that has a point to it. It doesn't have to be an original story. It just has to be a story that's well told. Seven Samurai comes to mind there. It's not really an original story. You know, in particular, but it's an extremely well told story. So I tend to like that kind of stuff as an example, only for example purposes. Yeah, I'll look it up. Oh, that's Bud Fox. There you go. Hold on. I didn't see. I just happened to look down and see that. All right, well, good deal. you actually found me live or doing a live stream on X. So welcome. Anyway, so I think I'm kind of out of shit to talk about unless you have a specific question or something like that. I've kind of talked myself out and everything. Plus, I'm tired. Like I said, I'm surprised I don't have like sawdust. I probably do have sawdust in my hair. I've been cutting branches and they're all overhead. So imagine me wielding one of my limbing chainsaw over my head, all morning long. That was me today. I'm going to do a movie video. That's a good question. I have to think of one that I want to actually do, and then, figure out how I want to set up the camera to kind of follow along. And I will probably, when I do it, I'll probably do it because it'll be a really long form. I mentioned this the other day. I'll probably end up posting it to, it'll post to X because X will take the longer format videos, and as will YouTube. But like the other, TikTok, I'll post like a clip, like a 5-minute clip or something like that. But I'll put them out there and everything for people that are interested. And it's purely elective. And it'll be just kind of my opinion of just kind of what I'm seeing, not necessarily just my opinion doesn't have to be yours, right? People, that's how art works. Art is going to affect people differently. They're going to see something different in each time. Though I will say that in the case, and I think about it, I may start with something like It's a Wonderful Life, not for the artistic aspect of it, although it is. Frank Capra was a genius, but because it is timely and it is dealing with largely the Federal Reserve, and there's a lot there in terms of the money aspect. So it kind of folds nicely, and so maybe I'll do something like that just to fold it over, so that it doesn't give people like whiplash, going from like the idea of financial physics, which I never thought would take off quite like it did. I was shocked when like 50 people followed me, anything I was saying. So that actually shocked the shit out of me that even happened. Let alone like tens of thousands. Like that's fucking weird to me. But so the people who like the idea of some of the finance related talk, it's like, okay, well, here's a film that actually deals with that deals directly with that. Now I know there's the whole Christmas theme and the whole idea about like be thankful for what you have, etc. I get all that, but I'm talking about the entire film is surrounded by this whole idea of money. That's the entire movie. Is like you're drawn into it as a result of that, and it's complicated because the stuff the subject matter, like you kind of have to know about the what it was like at the time, especially for younger people, right? Younger people, you have to look up a bank run, for example. Let's say that you're under, I don't know what, maybe like 35. Look up a bank run. Look up what bank runs were, look that stuff up and understand that, that like bank runs were very common back in the day because banks weren't getting bailed out. The Federal Reserve is the ultimate bailout. It's a bailout for every shitty bank decision that has ever been made since the inception of the Federal Reserve. So banks can now, they can just act a fool for the most part, and they know they're going to be bailed out by the lender of so-called last resort. Banks used to not get bailed out as easily, and in fact, before the Federal Reserve, there was no bailouts. So when there was a bank run, it usually ended very poorly for the bankers. Usually they found a tree. that's what they did, because that's what would end up happening with, because effectively if you had a town and they trusted this bank and the bank lost the townspeople's money, right? Or they overlent, and which is usually how it starts. It usually starts with bankers lending too much into the marketplace, and then the loans start going bad, and then it dries up, and then the people can't make their payments, and everything just implodes. Well, so what would happen is that people would go, okay, I want my money back right away, and the bank doesn't have it because of course they lent out more than there was gold to back it. And I've been over that a dozen times here. But yeah, that's just it. When you do something like that, then they lose everybody's money for them, and then everybody's like, oh my God, I'm broke, and like that was my life savings, and that doesn't work out well, figure some old farmer back in like the 1800s or late 1800s or early 1900s, for example. Let's just kind of picture the American Southwest, so-called, your typically framed Western, right? Where it's like a Sergio Leone era, like a 1875 kind of thing, and picture some old farmer who's just lost everything, right? And like has lost life savings, and now there's no time now for him to make that back. So it's not like a 22-year-old guy losing all his money. It's like that's a massive inconvenience and it's horrible, but it's not completely the end of the world. But if you've spent all your time building it up and then you lose it all, when you're in your 70s or something like that, or even your late 60s, you don't have as much time to try and make all that back. And especially with farming, because it goes pretty slow. You got to, you have a crop cycle, right? So for you to make it back, it's like, that's probably not going to happen. In all probability, you're not going to live another 50, 60, 70 years. So you just screwed his heirs out of everything. So, and that's how he would see it, or his widow, his future widow, or his wife, sorry. Not trying to be too morbid about that, but that's what would end up happening. So you'd end up screwing all these people out of their money, and so bank runs were pretty big deal, because it was kind of whoever got there first. So yeah, look that stuff up. These things are fascinating to study. They really are. I mean, look up bank runs. Look at the reasons that caused bank runs, and what you're going to find is it's usually the bankers lending out too much goddamn money. That's usually what it is, lending out too much goddamn money into a sector that eventually implodes. Because banks make money one way, and that is by lending money, making money with money. Interest on their so-called investments, if you want to call it that, even though it's a loan, it's not an investment. So they make money that way, and the idea is to keep lending it out. But the analogy I use is like dry cleaners. Let's say you have a town that needs maybe like 2 dry cleaners, one on the east side of town, one on the west side of town, right? That's it. There's probably only enough, and let's say it's a smaller town, so there's only enough people to really support those 2 dry cleaners. But if the bank starts irresponsibly lending money to everybody, every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to open up a dry cleaner, and now there's 45 dry cleaners, they become like Starbucks, where there's one every 7 feet. It becomes a problem, because now nobody's going to make any money. No, there isn't enough market to support any of that. Just like with the landlords. Just the same criticism I tell the landlords is that they're trying to get $3,000 a month for these 322 shit boxes. The markets don't support that. You're not smarter than the market, and the markets don't support it. But you're just angry that you're not getting this. Like this. Come on, no, that's not reality. That is just not reality. No, you have to go take it as it comes, and the market has changed. So there you go. But anyway, so these banks, they lend out this money irresponsibly, and then a bunch of people go out of business. Like, well, of course they go to business. There wasn't there was no way to support that. Banks used to have people that were your underwriters, for example, and your bank principals were usually local business owners, right, who understood this stuff. They were your doctors and your other business owners, and they were the ones who would pool their money together and create a bank. And the idea being that you're going to lend money, at a reasonable rate of interest to expand the infrastructure of a town, to make it more enticing that other people would want to work there or would want to move there. It's the theory anyway. So it's that actually is sort of, if you want to call it golden days of capitalism, if you want to call it that actually would be in theory what you would be looking at, is you're trying to make it attractive for people to want to move to that town. And of course, the reason you do that is because you're trying to expand the pie, right? As opposed to printing money. Printing money doesn't expand the pie. Printing money just creates inflation. That's all you get. But expanding the pie means expanding the number of people that show up to live and work in this town. That actually does expand. That, because they're going to have kids, they're going to do stuff, they're going to buy stuff, they're going to patronize these businesses. That's a positive thing. Then you have your growth. So that's how that works. But if you lend irresponsibly and do all this crazy shit, yeah, then you have this complete and total goddamn disaster. And then, of course, when everybody moves away, or like in the case of, like, if we want to carry that forward to modern day America right now, when people don't have 4, 5, 6 kids each, right? It regresses to the mean. It's not collapse. It's not. I mean, the billionaires call it a demographic implosion or a collapse. I still call it regression to the mean, because once again, it's like not everybody wants to have 4 or 5 kids, right? Some people are okay with 1 or 2, and you don't want to mess with that. But I mean, like just like I mentioned before and stuff. I mean, if you're gonna fight the war on teen pregnancy. You won the war, so congratulations. Here's your spoils. Basically an imploding economy as a result of it. So it sounds funny to say it that way, but it's like it's kind of true. I mean, so yeah, look up your bank runs and the kinds of problems that they would cause, and so then you can see where the selling point of the Federal Reserve comes from, right? Because there is a selling point to it. If you want to try and be fair, the selling point being that, okay, look, it's the same selling point that Nixon used. Remember, for those of you who've been through here, for whatever, I don't know how the hell long I've been talking for, probably too long, but for those of you who were here in the very beginning, it's like, yeah, Nixon had make this sales pitch that the dollar is better than gold because we can print more. So when you have a big disaster, we can show up on the scene and just spread a bunch of money around and everybody's happy. Sounds good in theory, right? And so it's one of these things that people like because it makes them feel good. Like, so I'm insured, right? I'm totally covered. I can just act a fool and do what the hell I want. I'm totally covered. That's what people hear. Now, that's not what happens. Right. What happens is usually a complete disaster. Right. It's the so-called free healthcare thing. Right. Imagine telling everybody, yep, that's it, single payer. Everything is totally free now. You can do whatever you want. How many people would start smoking again? Just like that. I mean, dude, there'd be bad behavior absolutely everywhere. People would be eating whatever the hell, anything they could stuff in their mouth. Yeah. I mean, people would be engaging in all kinds of crazy shit because, it's cool. It's cool. I'm covered, right? I just have to go, medical science just has to catch up with my bad habits and shitty decisions, right? So that's what would end up happening. And there's no money to pay for that. That's the problem. There isn't, if everybody did that, well, then we have a problem, right? That's the issue that never really gets taught. Again, it sounds good in theory, and it's usually people applying their value system. They're projecting their value system to everybody and think that everybody thinks like that. Everybody does not do that, as we've seen throughout just recently, right? If you flood immigration wise, you flood a bunch of people into your country who don't share your same values, you get a disaster because they don't share the same values as what is what you had or your civilization had. Well, same thing in the category of healthcare. You might actually be someone who eats your vegetables, your 7 cups of vegetables every single day that you're supposed to eat, apparently. My wife's been working on with this. And taking all your vitamins and drinking water, right? Not drinking energy drinks, right? Like the single worst possible thing. You're probably better off drinking whiskey than you are drinking energy drinks. People not doing that kind of stuff. They don't engage in that kind of behavior, right? So you may be like that. But what about for every one of you, there's 100 other people out there that will go on the spike. That's how it works. So, because again, it's free, so it's no big deal. So and also anytime somebody says something is free, it means that it has no value. That's the other problem with that too. So, I mean, and by the way, this is all pretty simple stuff that most people know. So, I'm not telling you anything new. You guys all know. You've heard a million people say this kind of stuff. I'm not going to say anything different because it's like, well, yeah, that stuff's accurate. So anyway, unless if there's any other questions before I go, I mean, I'll answer on stuff real briefly. But other than that, I'm going to probably take off and stuff. And then maybe next Sunday, Assuming I'm not on the road. If I'm on the road, I can still do this and everything. It'll just be a little darker because my overhead lights aren't very bright, and they look all weird and shadowy and stuff. It's all spooky and weird stuff. It works great for Halloween, but it doesn't do shit if you're actually trying to have a conversation with anybody. So, other than that, I'll just start doing counting down here, and then if nobody has any other questions, then I'm going to take off. And then I'll see you maybe next Sunday and stuff. In the meantime, thank you very much for all of you who showed up. And we'll catch up with you soon.